In most urban communities, choosing to eat less meat is a good choice. The production of meat requires more energy, more land, and more resources than the production of plants, and cattle farming especially contributes to rising carbon emissions and antibiotically resistant bacteria and viruses. CAFOs and other industrial animal farms dominate the market, meaning many purchases of meat support those that exploit cheap human labor, often underpaying and endangering undocumented immigrants, with threats of calling ICE should they be ungrateful. Beef is high in fat and relatively low in vitamins, and the methane gas that cows produce plague the world. That all said, though I don't eat red meat myself, I am often repulsed by many popular modern urban forms of vegetarianism and veganism. Not all, certainly, but many. See, though vegetarians and vegans are often concerned with the well-being of the world and of animals, both concerns that in a vacuum I would say are virtuous, the way they go about voicing these concerns are often disproportionate and, in some cases, colonialist. Giving any individual examples is beyond the scope of this channel. I'm not a harbinger of drama, and even though most of my regular audience is pretty relaxed, I don't want to even possibly encourage harassment. Rest assured, these are trends I've noticed and encountered both online and in real life, and bear mentioning. So, let's look at one specific example. Consider the indigenous peoples of the Arctic, pretty much around the globe. In many areas to survive, people have hunted bowhead whales for centuries. Given the relative lack of food in the Arctic, many governments have granted exemptions of anti-hunting laws for these indigenous people who need the whale to survive. Though sure, whales are relatively intelligent and some subpopulations of bowhead whales are endangered, I would hope that the life of a whale is valued less than the lives of dozens of people, right? I mean, very few vegans would directly say that an animal is more important than a human, at least out loud, although I have encountered that as well. Still, yet, many vegans would rather indigenous hunters around the world, but most prominently in the Arctic, not hunt for their food. Sure, they've been doing it for centuries without driving the populations to extinction, but some vegans are less concerned with conservation and more concerned with animal cruelty. After all, there's no denying that to eat a whale, you have to kill it, or at the very least butcher its corpse. And I'm using butcher in the technical sense here, not in a way to exaggerate the graphic nature of it. I bring up this trend for the Arctic, not anywhere else in the world, because unlike, say, in Manhattan, alternative eating options aren't really available to people above the Arctic Circle. Oftentimes, the nearest supermarket is a day away, and the food found there, due to the fact that it has to be transported across a country, is unreasonably priced. And what soil that isn't completely frozen or covered in snow is insufficient to grow edible plant life. The hunting of whales this far north is called subsistence hunting for a reason. For a lot of people, there is no other option. So, for those who wish them to stop but don't wish them to die, their solutions are rather colonialist. Some have suggested that indigenous northerners should move south and adopt capitalist eating habits. Ultimately, this is suggesting that people leave their homes, submit to a superpower's authority, and assimilate into a foreign culture, all because their hunting practices are seen as uncivilized. I'm used to hearing those excuses. Buildings aren't 2-story tall? Need to be civilized. Believe in more than one god? Need to be civilized. Respect women too much? Need to be civilized. Throughout the history of the world, colonizers have used any justification they can to erase the cultures of the people that they oppress. But, of course, often the colonizers don't see themselves as the villains. Missionaries abducting children think that they are saving souls. Soldiers killing civilians think that they are securing freedom. And now, vegans encouraging starvation or assimilation think that they are conservationists. And as a zoologist with a background in ecology, let me stress, indigenous people of the Arctic are not a threat to the survival of Arctic animal species. Though animals can and certainly have been hunted to extinction by humans, those have most often occurred in cases of recent human introduction to an area or of non-subsistence motivated hunting, usually for things like decoration or fur. As peoples like the Chukchi, the Inuit, and the Yupik have spent centuries hunting these whales, they are less of a threat to the species than, in fact, most vegans in the United States. Veganism can absolutely be sustainable, but in college and online, the majority of the vegans that I have met ate imported avocados, supported fusion restaurants, consumed plastic-wrapped products, ate palm oil, and still had the gall to criticize indigenous people unable to visit a Whole Foods. I'm not saying that you can't be vegan, far from it, but veganism isn't an excuse to harass and demean people unable to afford or access your lifestyle. If your passion for the well-being of animals is enough to drive you to remove all animal matter from your diet, you should be concerned with conservation. And if you're concerned with conservation, you should recognize that subsistence hunting is one of the least ecologically damaging lifestyles possible to live on the earth today. Even if you don't, you should have the common decency to not force a more destructive lifestyle onto somebody else.